Vicky is burning to speak again, so but we have
just two quick points quickly. I was smiling when Maria got stuck on the issue of we, when she said Martina, sorry, when she said we don't really know who we are. It's very simple, I think, because we is you and I. It's us. If we're not going to do something about it, who is? Why are we going to expect that somebody else has the magic wand and is going to come up with the solution to what we're talking about? Aren't we? We're here, we're discussing, aren't we? I mean, is St. James some elite form of membership or something? I think. But that's why I'm not being argumentative. I'm just smiling at the fact that yes, the right use of the word we. It is we who have to do that. It's we who have to do it. That's just in the offing. On the idea of going out and having ideas.
If we want to.
Sorry.
Because she has a microphone now, so at least you'll give her the right of reply.
All right, sorry.
I mean, I definitely didn't want to imply that St. James is some kind of elitist organization.
Sure.
Anything like that. I don't think it's really...
It was just amusing the way you got stuck on it, that's all.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can see how you can get that impression, and perhaps because I worked here on the front lines of St. James a couple of years ago, that I don't have that impression. But when I'm going to go like slightly academic here, but when we talk of identity, we generally speak of asserting that identity in relation to an other. So what I'm interested in is who is that other if we know who we are then.
Fair enough. Just one small point about the idea for having the ideas of kids tone. It would be brilliant. I think it would be very difficult to get the kind of feedback by trying to get the kids in here. So ideally, my suggestion would be Eva. It's a brilliant idea. We'll see how we can concoct it. I don't know. We'll see who we can pull in. But it would be brilliant if we go out there and see what these kids want.
Liz's son can come.
What they think. You know?
Roadshow, yeah. I mean, I think you do need to do that. It's very important.
I'd just like to add a small continuation on this point regarding reaching out to people who are not necessarily in this building and having this discussion with kids, and that is perhaps having this discussion on campus at university. The university holds around 30 or 40 rather 40 associations, 40 organizations, all of which are trying to unleash their creativity. They're trying to show their work and their creativity, and perhaps they're suffering from a disconnection to a network on a national level. So perhaps university on campus where people are still young, however they are already at a stage where they are releasing their work and unleashing their creativity. Perhaps it would be a good idea to have this sort of discussion there on campus, to target perhaps a younger audience. I mean, the university is an intrinsic hub for creativity. I mean, a university in itself, I believe, is a creativity hub. New ideas sprout from there. So perhaps that would be an interesting point to delve about.
Indeed. So Vicky, I think, disagrees with you completely, which now gives her even more.
Well, considering how the student unions are conducting at the moment their campaigns to be elected, I think it lacks a lot. It has a lot of money, but lacks a lot of creativity. To be honest, I mean, it's seriously disappointing to see that they are emulating the way we conduct our national elections. I would have thought students could be more creative than that, but that's a little aside. I take your point, Liz, but I was trying to establish the difference between teacher and somebody who isn't there to teach, you know, because I think we're a bit fed up of teachers in this country. However, I want to attract the attention to the word legacy, because the fact that we don't have a word in Maltese, when we say legacy, it is the persons who do something who pass on. When we say eredità, it is the persons who are receiving. There is no action of doing in the Maltese language, in this environment. And I think that a center for creativity is all about doing. Even if you are spectating, you are doing. You are not just receiving, and you can be simply a receiver, a consumer, but if you are spectating things that are challenging you all the time, then you are doing. It's an action. And I think that because we do not have the meaning of doing and of passing over something that is done in Maltese, the whole concept of legacy in this country, particularly to the arts and culture, is always about receiving. And our politicians, our policymakers, are not thinking, they are devising activities for us. They are preparing events which may or may not interest us. I mean, I have a series of events which are in my mind, which go through my mind, some which I say yes, and some which I say really hopeless, but anyway, that's very subjective. However, the fact of encouraging people to do and to go and to act or to watch or to interact somehow is not there. I'm not sure it's because it's lacking in our language and therefore it's lacking in our attitude. But certainly, I think legacy is first of all about doing, and there we come to commitment, and then being able to transmit what has been done. And it's just a thought that I wanted to throw in there.
Yes, I think, are you John? Yes, indeed. Could we have a microphone for John, please? And I think unless there are any people who haven't...
just to answer,
yes, please.
Just to answer a small point.
Please go ahead.
I'd like to disagree with an early point you raised, namely about the organizations and the creativity and how they're showing it. Despite being the ones that make the most noise due to their perceived political connections, they're not. These two organizations are not the only two organizations on campus, and I think it would be very wrong to assume that all creativity is sprouting from university is sprouting indeed from these two organizations. There's a whole myriad of other organizations who perhaps their work goes unnoticed due to, of course, not having these connections. But I'm not talking about just for political student organizations, but rather organizations which focus more on the courses students are taking, such as psychology. So there's organizations like BitUpSci and organizations like the MMSA. So the organization represents medical students at the university, which does a lot of work both creatively and in the public sector. So these are all organizations which are working and which are trying to unleash their creativity. So it's not just the two organizations which perhaps make most noise, which are the ones that have most creativity emanating from them. There's that point.
So this seems to be the sort of conversation that can even go on after we finished, because for those of you who are not familiar with these sessions, at the end of this session, we, as I said earlier, perhaps even invite you downstairs for a drink. But before we get to that, we'll take one more comment, and then the way the format has been for these sessions, we've also been having closing comments from our guest interlocutors, and then we'll go and partake in some kind of libation, some of which comes to us from Attard & Co. And it's, what is it? I'm always reminded to, I get these SMSs during these from my colleagues here, remind me to say thank you to Attard & Co. for their wine 35 South. That's why you see me fiddling with my phone, really. I'm not sending kisses to my girlfriend. So, well, never mind. Please, John, sorry.
Thank you. I find this just a bit curious because one would have hoped that as a Millennium Project, there would have been a very, very clear idea of why this building was built. And what I find slightly distressing is the fact that they've appointed a director who now has to define for the organization why it exists. One would have hoped that you had inherited a remit, you had been hired, to actually honor the purposes for which the organization exists. So I think there is a slightly organizational problem here. My feeling is that, and I've only been in Malta really for the last year, but there is a sort of cultural apartheid if one isn't careful. There are a couple of things that I would have been interested in coming here to see, which are in Maltese, which means, as I don't speak Maltese, I couldn't really participate in. And I'm sure there's other people who don't speak Maltese who are citizens here who have been cut out of that process. Similarly, you've had consultations which have been for Maltese people than for English-speaking people, as opposed to putting the same group of people in the room together to exchange ideas with each other. Of course, then there's things in English which would certainly prohibit, for instance, my neighbors in Cameroon from coming because they don't have the slightest idea what's being said. And then there's another thing that I found that I was interested to see the exhibition downstairs, or the installation, which was the Maltese cross made up of cartridges. And I thought, well, this is really exciting that the institution is engaging in an important social debate, or cultural debate, which both social and cultural. But then I read the description of it, and I thought, oh my God, who are they trying to communicate to? My feeling was that it was an artist who was trying to communicate to academics. If it was trying to communicate to the public, I have two friends who are visiting me at the moment. One is head of film and television at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and the other one, his wife, is a marketeer who has been in arts and educational marketing for years. And they just sat, I showed them the blurb for the exhibition or the installation, and they're gobsmacked. Does the organization exist for artists? Does the organization exist for the public? And I think, to my mind, it's quite clear, that an institution like this has to exist as a bridge between the artist and the public. If it's not doing that, it shouldn't be there. The other thing I would say to you, too, is that you really should have a remit which says, what if we weren't here? What would happen, or what would go on, whether we're here or not? So I think your worry about some of the dance schools and drama schools, well, they would exist whether you're here or not. But if you're going to engage with them, what do you bring to them that nobody else is going to bring to them? It's interesting, too, that I think culture, to my mind, is the way people live. Art is an expression of that. Therefore, your job, I think this institution's job, is really to find ways that express what it is to be Maltese, what it is to be a European, what it is to be a human being, and how people who don't know or don't appreciate what art is, or what art can do for them and for their lives, you need to bring those things together. Any exhibition you put on here, any performance you put on here, any film you put on here, could be interesting for people who've never would have stepped through the doors before. It's about how you present it, how you engage with people. It's not always just about what you put on. Now, the other thing, too, I'd say, finally, is that this building has an extraordinary position. It's an extraordinary building in many ways. But it doesn't seem to make any attempt to engage with people passing by. And I just think, oh my God, I was invited to come to a meeting here. I walked up and down past it. I didn't have the slightest idea that it existed. What was inside. So there's nothing that says, come in, we want you. Come in, there's something exciting happening here. The other thing, too, I'd say is this, as an agency, certainly for visual arts, you're very well placed, for film, for music, but for theater, I think this is an architect's idea of what a theater should be.
You're absolutely right.
And I think it's very limiting. So what I would say is, if as an agency, your job is to do things that wouldn't happen if you weren't here, look at other spaces that you can use to provoke and promote ideas. And rather than having artists in residence for a short period, have them here for a year at a time, so they can soak up what it is, the essence of Malta, and present back to the people, the community they've been living in, working in, something which is their response to being here in Malta. But there is a dynamic, a process that is very, very important. But I do think you've got to promote, you've got to provoke. Otherwise, why are you here?
Absolutely. Thank you, John. I think we'll take one further comment from Rupert, and then in the interest of time, we'll wrap it up, and we can continue, obviously, over drinks.
I was really intrigued by one of Milena's comments about the similarity between creativity and passion. And you said, how can you teach passion? Or can you teach passion? And I think you just cannot. But passion has something which could be contagious. And maybe the trick about creativity is there. How to create an environment that is contagious. And that should be where this discussion should lead us to. So, what kind of environment this institution, this building, this space can create that can be contagious?
Hey, Milena, did you want to react to that, or perhaps add that to your closing remarks, perhaps?
Oh, it's hard to add to that, but I will conclude with another word which is missing from the Maltese vocabulary for the time being, which is crowdsourcing. I'm looking for someone who will coin the Maltese word for this. But it's great to see such an example of crowdsourcing in a way, with all these people who give their feedback and ideas. I think that the outcome should really be very interesting, engaging, and contagious, I hope.
Thank you, Milena. Hira.
Yes, I have my final feeling on the same lines, was that my just kind of a sort of an answer and the conclusion with the passion, and there were many words in the same lines of enjoying, and I really like the word buzz, which is maybe not really a word, but I guess this is the answer of how passion can be contagious. That there was the answer of the person coming in here just feeling the energy, the buzz happening, and that's where you want to stay. That's what you want to do. That's how you bring, I guess, the teenagers in as well. When you I totally agree, sorry for overusing the word education, but yes, when you create the environment, when it's buzzing, when something is happening, you want to stay there. Now, okay, how to create it, it's a challenge, it's easier said than done, but well, I guess that's the aim. And the other closing point was a sort of an answer to we are here, and who are we, and St. James. My feeling is that after this discussion, yes, you made a great job, Tony, by making us part of it, and kind of, I think most of us will leave thinking of the things that were mentioned here, and that it's our job to make them happen, to bring the buzz, to educate the people, to continue the work we are doing, because, well, that's how we can achieve it. That's how we can educate the audience, bring the things, make things happen. So yes, you made us part of your team, because we are here, because we've contributed, because we've heard, and yes, we just have to go and continue doing, and it will happen.
Indeed. Your words are my notes, of course. You know, we don't transcribe word for word what is being said, but we do transcribe in the sense of we take the salient points from what is being raised, and that is what informs us. I mean, I find myself saying things rather differently today than I did even 5 months ago, when I first presented this same strategic vision in Maltese to an audience similar to this one. Liz, please.
Yeah, just linking up to passion and what Rupert said, and Milena. The passion is there. It's there in kids. It's educated out of them. So perhaps over the years, St. James has become a product of society. Like John said, you don't need to create or enforce, or the culture is endemic. It's there, And St James over the years has reflected what is outside its door. It's done a good job of that. So the same people come. It's only talked to a portion of that culture. So to not lose the passion and therefore become a catalyst for putting that passion back into people that have had it educated out of them, basically, I think is one of its major challenges, without being seen to do that in a kind of falsified way, through putting on or staging, or it has to be a natural thing, because a nation's culture, and this is a nation made up of millions of cultures now, the people living here, it's a very hard thing, but the schooling system not only removes the passion, it enforces a very set notion of culture. And we had the idea of innovation earlier that came up. I think innovation is very, very important to spark creativity. But we have children being educated who are educated not to fail. To fail is to learn and to try again and to harden yourself and be determined. And you can't fail. We don't like the notion of trying but not getting it right. And I think that's another thing that St. James maybe, we want experiments. They might not all have the largest audience because we haven't grown the audience to meet them. So I think that has to be taken outreach into the society, that you can fail and it's still a worthwhile thing to have tried.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you all. In conclusion, I'll just add what I mentioned I would say at the end, and that is the 3 action points that we're taking forward over the coming weeks until the next session in this series. But more than the next meeting, what's more important is what we're actually doing. The first action relates to the element of identity. And what we've done here is we've appointed a data scientist in residence for 6 months, rather than an artist first, so that we can gather some data. And because I think this is essential, we presently don't have current data that relates to what we do, what's going on, what people are really interested in, and the sort of things that some of you have even expressed here this evening. And so within the next 6 weeks, we're looking to present the initial findings from our data scientist in residence, who is also, through this process, informing our rebranding exercise, which clearly won't simply be a matter of getting a new logo, but certainly considering the sort of things, for example, that John mentioned. How do we attract people's attention to what's going on within these walls when they walk by? Something even as simple as that, or perhaps not as simple as that. The second action is the pulling together of a cohesive program of diverse activities, as I like to put it, rather than mostly standalone events. And so this will be our presentation, if you will, of a preliminary program for the season that starts at the end of August of this year into June, July next year, as well as hopefully perhaps we'll be in a position to formalize this a little bit, a series of collaboration agreements that we're in the process of doing with other institutions and organizations towards what I've been calling a solid foundation to broaden the range of activities. So that is to say, this is how we're addressing the point of diversity or outreach or reaching out. The third action is the active creation of archiving activities, archiving of activities that took place within the Center for Creativity over the past 15 years. So that is the historical approach, but also ensuring that we have a process to document what is taking place now, so that the kind of reparation work that's taking place in terms of what happened over the last 15 years doesn't need to happen again 15 years from now, hopefully. And so you'll see these are the first of a number of action points as to how we start putting flesh, if you will, on the bones once they've been formed rather more clearly of what the strategic vision in as it comes to a strategic plan and eventually our action plan. Thank you all very much for being so generous, not only with your time, but also with your thoughts and your ideas. And I hope the conversation can go on over drinks downstairs in the main hall For those of you who don't know where the main hall is, just follow everyone else, I suppose. That's the easiest way to put it. Thank you very much.